Today we are celebrating Epiphany. This is an ancient Christian celebration dating back at least to the 300s. Epiphany is one of my favorite days in the year of the church. The word comes to us almost directly from the Greek, epi, meaning on or upon, and phaneros, which means visible or seen. So Epiphany means to show up, to show on, to show out. The star shows up so the Magi can make their journey and show up to see Jesus. For people living in Israel who grew up hearing Isaiah's promises, people who were living under occupation themselves, I wonder what the image of the Magi from the east, offering their gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh to the child Jesus, meant to the people of Israel when they saw that caravan moving through town. One might think the Magi would bring hope to the people, validation from outside sources that something important was happening. Maybe the rumors of the shepherds and the angels were true. For as Isaiah wrote, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you." I want the presence of the Magi to remind people of long-held promises. I want the Magi to invite people to see the world in new ways. The text says this, however. When King Herod heard this news, he was frightened, and all of Jerusalem with him. King Herod met the wise men and was frightened, and all of Jerusalem was frightened too. Because that's how it works when you're ruled by an insecure ruler. When you're ruled by a despot, when you're subject then to the whims and the fears of the despot. It's hard to be excited about a star in the heavens when a despot is throwing a tantrum in the palace. King Herod is afraid of a baby. A grown man with an army, with all political power, is afraid when he hears the news of a child born to be king. Insecure leaders create an unsafe populace, and so all of Jerusalem is afraid too, because they don't know what he's going to do next. 2020 was a year when fear took over our lives more than I've ever experienced in my life. Yes, we have experienced fear before the pandemic, of course. And yes, some people have been facing systemic oppression that leads to real fear that I didn't see until recent years. But this year, this is the one that fractured our society with fear in new ways. Now, I know things won't magically be better because we've turned our calendars over to 2021. I know it won't magically be better because a new administration would be in power, but I pray that our optimism and our hope that in a new year things can be better, I hope that that optimism stays with us. I hope it can be the lenses that help us live by something other than fear. A friend once gave me a Christmas card that shows there were originally 4 Magi, but one of them veered off the path, following Elvis and proclaiming, "I'm going to follow that star." We don't know what happened to that 4th wise man, of course. But I wonder, too, if we've been following the wrong star, if we focused too much of our energy in the shadows, or as Isaiah put it, "Darkness shall cover the earth, and thick darkness the people." Maybe we've been covered by the darkness of fear. And maybe it's time to shake off that darkness, and it's time to show up and to shine the light. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you. I don't think we should just ignore the bad things that are happening around us, but are they keeping us from looking up at where God may be leading us by a new star? We can choose not to be afraid just because King Herod is afraid and wants us to be afraid too. You know who's not afraid at all in this story? The Magi. Herod tells them to report back to him so that he too can pay Jesus homage. And I don't know if they believed him when he said it, but they were warned in a dream not to return to him. The The Magi received an unjust order from a vindictive tyrant, and they disobeyed him, journeying home by another road. Had they been led by the fear of the despot in the palace, they would have obeyed those directions. But having met the child, having worshipped him, perhaps it became clear you can either worship Jesus or you can worship the emperor. You can't give your allegiance to both. Giving homage to Jesus sends you home by other roads, away from the fear in which earthly leaders traffic. The stars, of course, are shining in our sky 24 hours a day, but it's only at night that we see them. So when things seem dark and the path seems hard to find, we have to remember to look up. Epiphany comes in the night. Are we willing to look for its signs? Many of us did look to the skies on the solstice to see the convergence of Saturn and Jupiter in the night sky, and to our eyes they looked so close as to be one star, but they were still 450 million miles apart from each other. It was nice in the middle of the busyness of our lives to pause and to collectively look up at the skies. We can't, of course, stare at the skies all the time unless we're astronomers, and then that's our job. But when the world feels bleak and scary, when what we see in front of us and around us is just the fear-mongering of Herod, I pray we will choose a different allegiance and look up to see where God may be directing us. The Epiphany was, of course, only the beginning of the changes for the Magi for all of us. And not all of the changes that it brought were easy. The epiphany of the child born as a king in Bethlehem turned the world upside down and shook the palace in Jerusalem. Because the world responds when God breaks into the world, and it isn't always peaceful. I invite you to read ahead in Matthew's Gospel this week if you want to see how the powers of the world responded to the Epiphany. However it was, the Magi knew that this star was different, that this child was a king. They followed their call, and they showed up for a journey that would take them home by other roads. There's an old book by Henry Van Dyke called The Story of the Other Wise Man, and it chronicles a Magi who misses the caravan to Jerusalem because he stops to help an ill man on the side of the road. He still travels on to Bethlehem, but he's missed the Holy Family who's fled to Egypt, and he's missed his Magi friends who have gone home by another road. So then he goes to Egypt, and he searches for Jesus in the refugee camps and the settlements. He ministers to those he encounters on the way, even as it delays his search for the child. He spends his gifts that he had brought for the baby to feed people, to free people, to care for people. Finally, 30 years later, he's back in Jerusalem as Jesus is about to be crucified. This Magi is headed to the cross and encounters yet one more person who needs his help. This Magi feels like he's been a failure, that he has missed the king he's been looking forward to give homage to his whole life. And God speaks to him, thanking him for his gifts. And the man responds with, "Lord, when was it that I saw you hungry, or gave you food, or thirsty, and gave you something to drink? And when was it I saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it that I saw you sick or in prison and visited you?" The man quotes Matthew 25 at the end of this gospel. And God responds, "Truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these members of my family, you did it to me." It occurs to me that Matthew 25 is the way the author of this gospel invites us to follow the star, because we too missed the original caravan. Yet the work of our lives is to follow the star in search of Jesus so that we can show up and we can help the people we encounter. The star doesn't promise we'll always see the path clearly or even know where we're headed. I've been reading through the poems of W.H. Auden, and in his poem For the Time Being, A Christmas Oratorio, the characters of the Magi speak about their journey at the end. They say, At least we know for certain that we are three old sinners, that this journey is much too long, that we want our dinners and miss our lives, our books, our dogs, but have only the vaguest idea why we are what we are. To discover how to be human now is the reason we follow this star. Friends, I pray we take time and show up for the journey, ministering to those we meet along the way. Blessings to us all. Friends, lift up your eyes and look around, for it is in the darkness of our world that God shines a star for us to follow. To discover how to be human now is the reason we follow this star. So may it lead us to a child born to show us the way of peace. May it lead us to the work of hope that God is even now dreaming for us. Arise, shine, for your light is come. Amen.